Now actually I thought I'll give a talk on design thinking versus thinking design. Basically if you take a look at it, of late design thinking is becoming really famous. Everybody is only talking about design thinking. Here I will say in architecture, design is something which we've been coming across for a very long time. So in today's presentation I thought I'll just give an insight into what is the difference between these two things with respect to architectural education. So I'll be giving an insight into the basic design tasks and the emergent outcomes. Here I have shown three pictures. One is anamorphism. The second one, if you take a look at it, is the cubism painting, and the third one is revolves around tangram, a puzzle. Now the entire presentation is going to revolve around these three things. Okay. Now in any design studio, if you take a look at, we introduce lots of design tasks, and you just type it in the Google and you get n number of solutions for it. So what happens is, of late students have the tendency to download or to look into those references, and they try to mimic it or take a part of it or combine it into n number of ways, and then they try to evolve their design. So this is where the teachers are facing lots of challenges. So what happens is, like with a thrust on basic design tasks, there are three different ways through which it can be framed. The first one, of course, is the traditional strategy, which is about the progressive evolution of form. The second one is about borrowing, where you tend to borrow things from paintings or sculpture or crafts or any other thing. Whereas the third approach is with respect to decon or decomposition, a process in which one takes a given whole apart and finds new ways to combine them. So the tangible outcomes of these extensive studio assignment is to corroborate the perception of space in architectural design in the initial years. Now I have a set of a few images, okay, which was done as part of a design studio during the academic year 2016, and here you will be able to say that we thought we will introduce the principles of constructivism in a basic design studio, where you have an informal task or an activity, and that is the one which is going to really support the other basic design task, which revolves around this basic design studio. Now here, if you take a look at the first one, it's about the mediums and modes, where we gave the students to explore the various modes, mediums, etc. And then we just came up with a simple way of doing word art in both the black and white as well as in colors, and of course we gave them the opportunity to explore the kind of the paper, the modes in which they are going to work about. With second one, if you take a look at art, we introduced the Fibonacci series, where numbers, we know, as we all know, it plays a significant role, and with that we tried to ask the students to explore lots of grids along the x, y as well as the diagonal axis, and then they came up with the second one, as you are able to see here, and the outcomes were completely different. Whereas the third one, it was like we took clay, where we thought we should give them an insight into this materiality, and they were supposed to identify smaller objects, create impressions, and the first time when they said, they were supposed to actually evolve the positives, and finally the negatives were the presentation. So here what happens is, the task is about creating impressions in the clay, where they get an opportunity to explore that particular properties of that material and the pressure which is given, and secondly it is about how they go about translating the figure and ground exercise, which we had tried to elaborate it. And of course the next exercise, as you are able to see it here, it's like constructing a single building with a single line, with a building with a single line. And here what we did was an informal task was actually introduced, where we had the thread being the single line, and they were supposed to create an element taken from that of a building, and they had to work it out. And slowly what happens is, like they, with a pencil with a starting and an ending line, they had to create the entire building without any crisscrossing. This is a task which we had done it when I was a student in 1996, but the only add-on here is the thread. That's the informal activity which we had introduced to the students, and then with that as the base, the students were given an opportunity to explore that. With the last one, which is actually highlighted there, what we did was, it's like we identified tangram, and they were supposed to explore the principles of anamorphism in it, and I'll get back to that task later in the later presentation. Whereas the second one, here if you take a look at, we have the paintings and they were supposed to abstract it, that is one task, and the second one is they were not only supposed to abstract it but also create a three-dimensional object from that. How they go about interpreting it with wires. So, the initial task, if you take a look at it, it was with wires, and here it is with, the previous one was with thread, whereas here we took the wires as the mode of expression, and they were supposed to kind of explore the properties of the wire with respect to the thickness, the material which is used, and create an outcome for which the inspiration is drawn from the painting itself. And of course, the last two tasks, if you take a look at, you have lots of planes which are actually cut, and they were supposed to be connected without any adhesive. So here they really learnt about the proportions of the profile, such as your parallelograms and rectangles, to what extent the slit can be made and how it can be interlocked, and that is actually a skill based activity. And apart from that, they were also given the opportunity to explore a three-dimensional form from it. And the last exercise, which is about 3D to 2D, if you take a look at it, they were supposed to identify a natural element, and they were supposed to depict it two-dimensionally. And here, after that, what happens is they also used to kind of abstract it and create a three-dimensional model out of it. These were the various basic design tasks which we had explored, and the next one we will move on, like with a thrust on the puzzles. If you take a look at, here you will be able to see this dissection puzzles, where you will be able to see a series of frank puzzles, a number of puzzles which are actually increasing in number. With the last one, if you take a look at it, it is the Edmund Monckton's puzzle, which has around 209 pieces. I will say similar pieces which needs to be created, or which needs to be fitted in, so as to create that kind of geometrical shape, and which is actually challenging. Now here we were talking about the tangram, right? Now I will try to give you an insight into what tangram is. In school, I am sure we would have explored these tangrams, where we were supposed to create lots of two-dimensional expressions. That was the one which actually taught us lots of geometry and things like that. Here, the first one is a 7 pieces, it's a tangram which comprises of 7 pieces, whereas the second one is a modified tangram with just 5 pieces. I also have lots of other dissection puzzles, where you will be able to see circular puzzle, it's the magic egg, then you have the broken heart, and Pythagoras dissection puzzle, Archimedes, and Mongolian puzzles. Whereas here, these puzzles, if you take a look at, they are all open-ended, in the sense like it can be combined in any way to create a two-dimensional composition. Whereas the T puzzle which I have shown here, the pieces are there and the solution can only be T. So here I would like to differentiate between the open-ended and the closed-ended. So this was my source of inspiration with respect to this while framing the tasks. And here in this presentation, if you really take a look into, we will be really looking into puzzle based open-ended tasks, where tangram has played a major role in framing a task. The second one is like what happens is we do lots of exercises in the basic design studio, but there is always a huge disconnect between your basic design studio and your first architectural design studio. We have tried to break this gap, and we have extended the basic design studio into the architectural design studio, and that is also will be like kind of covered in this presentation. And the last thing is like how you go about translating the 4D into 3D. In the sense like if you take a look at the cubism paintings, okay, I hope you remember the first 3 images which I had showed you. There if we take a look at the cubism paintings, right, you will be able to see lots of triangles, abstract geometrical profiles which are having lots of colors, and lots of other artist tries to interpret his expression using or in a very abstract way, right. So that also a direction is being given, how to is explored here. And the next one, if you take a look at, you will be able to see, this is what I was talking about, the tangram, and how we go about creating n number of two-dimensional expressions with the open-ended task here. So this is something which is very important. Right from the school days, tangrams, has played a major role in understanding the proportions, especially for the people who have worked on it, and with an intention to make it or introduce it as part of the basic design studio, a number of exercises were actually explored. The first one was about creating a composition by sticking these kind of pans, okay, the 7 profiles parallel to each other in order to arrive at a derived an abstract form, as you are able to see it here. And the next one, if you take a look at it, the same pans were taken. They were actually the students were asked to create a composition for some kind of an aesthetic purpose. And whereas the third one, if you take a look at, we added the next dimension, utility to it, and how these stands can be kind of composed or stuck together in order to arrive at an outcome which has utility. Now, this is something which is very important, where we have asked them to stick the pans perpendicular to the horizontal plane, and we also asked the students to explore the principles of tanamorphism, where you will be able to see the paintings right in the front of the pans, behind the pans, and also the horizontal plane. So, on the whole, if you take a look at it, you will be able to give some kind of holistic view towards it. So, this we try to experiment it, and this is something which is very interesting. As part of theories of thinking, we had tried to introduce it for the third year students, where they came up with these kind of outcomes. And apart from that, since I was talking to you about constructivism in a design studio, what we did was we even extended this to an FDP program, which was actually conducted in AMA School of Architecture, where the faculty members got the opportunity to work with the 5 planes, and the emergent outcomes you will be able to see the nature which is found to be running all around the planes, and you also will be able to see abstract expressions of the paintings as well as that of the planes, which has been composed sequentially, and there were different ways of even representing the same. And the same thing we also extended it to the the walls, the paintings at the Department of Architecture, and here if you take a look at it, you will be able to see the graphics and how we went about graffiti being explored, the puzzles coming into it. You will be able to see the paintings which is running on the front facades, the side walls and things like that. So, this, when you are looking at it from a particular point, you will be able to read the entire essence of what has been depicted in those walls. This we actually had done it as part of the 25th year of celebration at Satyabama Institute of Science and Technology, Department of Architecture. And the next one is, like as I was telling you, with respect to that of the paintings. See, what happens is, like whenever we are doing a direct tasks, what you get n number of solutions in the net. But when we are trying to give unique tasks, okay, where we also have to look into how the teacher has to be really aware of how the students can explore the principles or elements of design from it, it becomes really challenging. And this is what I will say, it's about like how you go about framing the tasks. Framing design task, whether it is the basic design studio or whether it is your normal design studio, it is the most important thing. And according to Antinoides, he says that this literature, right, that is a major source of inspiration for architects, where architects have read the poems or the literature, pieces of literature written by famous poets and others, and they have tried to incorporate it in architecture itself. So, what we had done was we had asked the students to identify 2 types of painting. One is the imperialism and or expressionism, the other one is cubism. With respect to that of the first order paintings, where you will be able to really read the paintings well, there we had asked them to decode the elements. So, initially it was very difficult for the students to really decode it, because it was something very new for them. So, they were given lots of ideas to explore the colors or decode the paintings with respect to that of the texture or with respect to that of the painting strokes, how it had been done, or with respect to that of the dark and lighter shades. So, the students started exploring it, and what happens is, like in the basic design studio, initially as I had shown you, the initial tasks were very simple, which just require linear thinking. Whereas when we move on from one task to that of the other task, what happens is we have added complexity layer by layer. So, at the last task, when we were talking about the nature or with respect to that of the paintings, what happens is the complexity is very high, and other than that, the students also had to really was finding very difficult to complete the task with respect to time. So what we had done was differential learning was actually differential learning and differential timing was given, because each student took his own time to complete the task successfully. And here you will be able to see the outcome of one painting where the student has really tried to explore the painting with respect to that of the lines or with respect to that of the colors. You also will be able to see the strokes, and other than that the interiors, I mean the different ways through which he or she really can explore or interpret the paintings in his or her own way. Now this is another outcome of where the painting was taken, it was actually abstracted, and there you will be able to see the way the paintings have been really abstracted with monocolors. So taking the color scheme also is taken from that of the painting, and this is an amazing example where the student tries to understand what abstract is all about. So this is another example where you will be able to see the skull and how the student went about abstracting it and then giving or developing his or own colors. So in this process what happens is the student tries to unravel the process he or she has adopted in abstracting a painting or how they go about decoding the painting. This is something which is very interesting. Here with respect to that of the boat, what that particular student did was he had cut the strips of the painting, he had actually cut the painting into various slips, he rearranged it in order to create an abstract form. So the process, what happens is peer learning plays a significant role in this kind of a thing. Okay, now here what happens is from the painting the student is supposed to create a three-dimensional model with wires. So initially it was with respect to that of a thread, but whereas here if you take a look at it, we have taken the wires as the material which the student has to really explore. Now here in this particular slide you will be able to see a tree, okay, an example impressionism, and slowly you also will be able to see the process adopted by the student in order to create a tree. The first tree the student had created is found to be very heavy, the kind of material was also very thick. So the next time when she tried to explore it, she had gone for a thinner wires, and automatically in the outcome you will be able to see the essence of the painting which she had taken. And these are things where the students get an opportunity to intangibly, they ravel them very intangibly. Now this is another outcome, you will be able to see it's a cubism painting, and the outcome where the eye becomes the source of inspiration in order to represent a boat, and here the student was really able to understand how to create the base for the boat and then the sails, and the emergent outcome came out like that. So this is how, I mean this is one way of framing basic design studio where the skill also automatically gets enhanced over a period of time. So these are the other outcomes. You will be able to see a crown, you also will be able to see a kind of a frame where an animal is present, and then you will be able to see a kind of a boat with a sail, and of course like a man who is actually entrapped within that of a cage, and you also will be able to see the circles which are hanging from top. This is the student has taken the source of inspiration from a painting where circles are found to be predominantly present, and so on. And this is something very interesting where you will be able to see the a lady who is sitting on the chair, and the same it became the student explored the painting, and she was able to create a literal interpretation of the lady who is sitting on the chair in the wheelchair, like how you are able to see it. The process is also documented here. Now this is something which is very interesting. This was the culmination task in that particular design studio where the student really has to take a nature, okay, capture the grammar, need to really interpret the plan, sections and elevation, and after interpreting it, he or she has to really create a three-dimensional form out of it. And here you will be able to see how the student has taken the inspiration from that of a cone and how she has tried to create a model with that. So, and that too here you will be able to see a combination of wires and also the foam boards. And of course now we also try to explore how the basic design task can actually be integrated with that of the architectural design studio one. So what we had done is like this task, okay, the nature, that became the source of inspiration for us, and we identified around 18 models which were done in the first semester, and we had asked the students to completely decode it. First create the plan sections and elevations to scale, like how you are able to see it. Here I am showing you a bird where one student has taken that as a source of inspiration, and where she started to explore or interpret each part, whatever was very interesting for her, the elevation, the feathers, and she tried to kind of interpret it through drawings graphically. And you also will be able to see how the student has taken the inspiration from the claws, okay, and she has tried to develop an architectural, give a form for it. So second task here, if you take a look at it, that particular model itself was actually decoded two-dimensionally with respect to that of the plan, sections and elevation. And what happened was, we said that depending upon the form, they had to identify a suitable function, and that also not only identify the function, but they also have to give an expression to it. So this is one kind of an outcome. Here you will be able to see how the student went about drawing the plan, section and elevation. And one thing is, the process, documenting the process was made compulsory for all the students, and whatever task they did, whether it is the basic design studio or the architectural design studio, they were supposed to kind of documented. And this is one outcome where you will be able to see the plan, the sections as well as the elevation, and that's the emergent outcome. And this is the way we try to incorporate, or we try to connect the basic design task with architectural design studio, where the student has really needs to take the inspiration from the form, from the natural form, and explore it or translate it into architecture. So this is what how we went about framing the task. We had the first part being the translations, and the second part becoming the transformations, and finally how you go about translating them into an architectural design. And the students were expected to work out a model in 1:50 scale. And finally it was the presentation incorporating the suggestions of the previous review. So this is how we went about it. And here I would like to introduce one particular model which inspired me a lot. That's the Maher's co-evolution of problem solution model. Okay. What happens is, like whenever a problem is being formulated, the teacher should have an idea about what will be the next phase. So when you are adding layers to the problem, the teacher also should have an idea, if I am going to add this particular layer, what will be the outcome, what can be expected. So what happens is, like this becomes very challenging when we are trying to experiment lots of designs in architectural design studio or the basic design studio. So whenever we are doing something like that, this Maher's co-evolution of problem solution model plays a significant role. Actually I will say here I will say what is design thinking and thinking about design. From a teacher's perspective, if we take a look at it, design thinking is the brief, okay, how we are going to make the students think about it, to what extent we are going to structure the design problem. So when a brief is framed, we have to have an idea about the rudimentary outcomes, and with that we have to actually frame it. Whereas from the student's perspective, if you take a look at, they will be thinking about the design, and what happens is, like layer by layers. So when the puzzle blocks or the puzzle traps or the mental blocks are completely being solved one by part, what happens is, this wicked problem becomes a well structured problem, and this is the process undergone by the student. I will put it as problem structuring. And what happens is, so from a student's perspective, his design process, everything revolves around the solution, whereas the teacher, while we are framing the brief, we should be very clear about what the emergent outcome will be, what kind of design process or the thought processes which will be going on in the student's mind. So that's why this I thought I should really share this Maher's co-evolution of problem solution model, where the problem space evolves from Pt to Pt plus 1 to that of Pt plus n, and similarly the solution space also moves from St to that of St plus 1 to that of St plus n as shown in the slide. And of course you will be able to see the arrows which are moving downwards, sideways, as well as that of the upward direction. So downward arrow, it really shows the problem leads to a solution, whereas the upward the arrow shows solution refocuses the problem. So that critical thinking we have to be very clear about, and we should also be very clear about the phases how the design problem will actually be unraveled from a student's perspective. That's the most important thing, and I will also say that is the key to the success of any design studio which is actually introduced in any schools. And I would like to share one more exercise which is actually done as part of a faculty development program conducted at Vellore Institute of Technology. Here I am sure all of you must be aware of what cubism is all about. In cubism paintings, this fourth dimension is something which is very common. So you will be wondering what is the fourth D. It's like I will say it's about, you will be able to see the front elevation, side elevation, the plan of the same object within that of a single frame. So that is what is called as the fourth dimension in 3D. And as you are able to see, simultaneous revelation of more than one aspect of an object in an effort to express the full image. That is the most important characteristics of any cubist paintings. And of course you have a variety of cubisms such as synthetic, analytical, and so on. So in this faculty development program, what we had tried to do was identify the cubism paintings, and they were supposed to explore the fourth dimension which they are able to interpret in the painting and convert it into a three-dimensional form. As I told you, an insight into what this fourth dimension was framed in the brief. And the second thing is like a description was given to the faculty members over there, and what is the style, when it was done, and who has done it. So the basic data, as you are able to see in this particular slide, was given, where the title of this particular task was framed as transforming fourth dimension to 3D. So it was actually a group work, and for this particular painting, the castle, which was actually done during the 1909, you will be able to see how the faculty members started exploring that, and with dry connections, with holes and with punching machines and with wires, how they tried to create that in order to capture the essence of fourth dimension as shown in the painting in their model itself. So these are the things which we also had to be clear about. It's just not like only puzzles, or it's just not only like paintings, any other thing. It can even be movies, or it can even be some kind of advertisements, or anything, the posters, anything can be taken into account, and we have to really experiment what are the abilities that particular tasks builds in an individual, and apart from that, how it contributes to the thinking processes and designing skills of a student. And of course, these kind of tasks, if you take a look at, people will really find it difficult to identify a problem from the net. These are the other outcomes. You will be able to see the fruit dish glass, which is done by Break. You will be able to see the emergent outcome. It was a literal interpretation of that, whereas the houses at El Estaque, but done by Break, you will be able to see the emergent outcome, where the wires and the elevations of the houses are actually kept, and the way they go about connecting the various pieces are also very unique, you know. Then you also have a painting done by Gleases, and there you will be able to see how the tree has been incorporated with just cardboard and wires. And one thing is, the way we go about identifying the materials, the connectors, how it will be done also depends upon the faculty, whether the essence will be captured with these materials. We have to be really critical about that. And here if you take a look at, you will be able to see any design problem, it's always a wicked problem, or we also call it as an ill-structured problem. And the student here, you will be able to see the process undergone by a student in order to identify or to evolve a solution for any task. he undergoes a series of design processes, and that I call it as problem structuring. And here you will be able to see how the student or the young minds has to really look into the wicked problems in order to arrive at a solution. So I will say the design briefs, the way we go about framing a basic design task is very challenging, and that's the one I will say it's a tool which actually etches design thinking amongst the students. Whereas from the student's perspective, if you take a look at it, is completely different, because he always focuses or revolves around how to go about arriving at a solution. So this is what I thought I should really share it with you. And here if you take a look at, you will be able to see how the portrait, okay, self-portrait of Picasso, how it has changed over a point of time. And this I will say, like, even in teaching we have to keep evolving in order to create lots of, in order to generate or write new design briefs from a diverse perspective, in order to make the young minds think about the same from different perspectives. So what we see depends mainly on what we look for. So thank you so much for giving this opportunity.